Latest news surrounding the Sacramento Kings is not the best, but if you're a Kings fan, hopefully you're optimistic to hear the news and hopefully the team comes out better on the other side of it. So earlier today, Chris Haynes reported that after the Kings suffered their 24-point loss at home to the Warriors last night, interim head coach Doug Christie called for a meeting with his starters, and he talks about, we're going to listen to this in a minute, he talks about all the details surrounding that player meeting. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section down below, what do you expect from the Kings this year? Are you expecting a playoff berth, play-in? What is it? Let me know in the comments. We're going to deep dive into some of the numbers analytically, of course, and talk about how the players have performed this year, specifically post trade deadline and post Aaron Fox trade, etc. So before we do, I wanted to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Prize Picks. So you guys can play through the link down below in the description. Make sure that you use promo code Bulletin when you do so to support the channel. Thank you so much if you choose to play. And when you guys play your first $5, you get $50 back. So that is really cool. Today we have some really, really easy picks. So like this 19.5 for LeBron, that's extremely easy, very obvious. I'm taking that. The Bradley Beal picks are here. I'm going to be bold here. They got a time limit, but I'm going to be bold. I'll say 23.5. I'll go more there. Last but not least, I think this is a really, really easy lock-in. Jokic, 21.5 points. That's very obvious, unless somehow, some way he has a terrible game today, which he shouldn't really have because he's Jokic for one, and two, the Lakers don't really have a center to stop him. So should be a good game regardless. But what did you guys pick? Again, play Prize Picks through the link down below in the description. Thank you so much for your support when you use code Bulletin. All right, so I wanted to take you guys into that video, and let's give it a watch.
Chris Haynes, and this is your Haynes Brief for today. After the Kings suffered an embarrassing loss to the Golden State Warriors Friday night at home, losing by 24, league sources then informed me that Kings interim head coach Doug Christie called for a meeting after the game with his starting unit. That unit consisted of Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Zach LaVine, and Sabonis. Now, first and foremost, in that meeting, I was told that Christie reiterated how he's in the fight with them, but there were some issues he wanted to address, such as making sure that everyone understood the gravity of the situation right now. He addressed ball security. He talked about how they've been compromising on defense. He wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. He spoke on learning how to communicate with each other, and he challenged his players to challenge each other in a positive way to yield some positive results. Now, the Kings are 15-10 since Christie has taken over at the helm, but after that loss to the Warriors, he obviously felt it was a dire time and an important time for him to address his starting unit in hopes that the message will be delivered, and in return, they will deliver the message to the rest of the team. This is Chris Haynes, and you've been briefed.
I love that. You've been briefed. All right, so let's get back to it. So the Kings made this coaching change to Doug Christie all the way back on the 27th. And like he was saying, they're 15-10. If you notice, a lot of wins take place like directly after that change happens. Now, sometimes that happens because obviously there's a shock to the system. If you're the team, oh, this is brand new. Like you're just trying to figure it out under a new coach. You maybe have a little bit of reinvigoration, all these different factors, right? The same thing can happen around the trade deadline when you get new trades and stuff like that. And they were really, really good in that stretch, basically throughout January. But then they start falling a little bit, and then they traded De'Aaron, I think, on the 5th. And basically since then, they've been about 500. So that's how things have looked for them. They brought in Zach LaVine. They brought in Jonas Valanciunas to be a backup center for them, which they also needed as well. Got rid of some other pieces like Len and stuff like that. But regardless, the Kings have been kind of just, hovering around. In their last 10 games, they're 4-6, losers of their last 2. And then when you look at some of the other stuff for them, they're exactly at 500 at 28-28, 10th spot currently in the Western Conference. That play-in range is going to be super duper competitive. So I don't know what the bar will be to make the playoffs as a 6 seed or be in the play-in window. It's just looking kind of like, mid 40s probably is what I'd say to be like the 6th seed, maybe 45, 46. But regardless, they're probably going to be somewhere in the mix for a play-in spot. But that play-in is going to be super competitive because you'd have to imagine the Timberwolves try to find a way up. You have to imagine that in a couple of weeks when the Mavericks finally get healthy, their guys will be coming back soon in the next 2-3 weeks. Assuming nobody else goes out, they should be nearly fully healthy at that point. You'd have to imagine that they find a way to climb up a bit. Golden State pulled off the trade. They're looking to climb up as well to that 6th seed. I think that Steve Kerr said that was a goal for them. And then there's San Antonio. I wouldn't expect much from them and below, but then there's Phoenix, who I don't know if they make the play-in either, losing 4 of their last games, 2-8 in their last 10. But regardless, I think that this is all going to get really tight. So if you're the Kings, you need to put things together and need to win. So they pulled off that big trade for Zach LaVine. And I wanted to start off by taking a look at what Zach has done production-wise for them. Now, I'd like to remind you that Zach was having a phenomenal year. We talked a lot about how he was untradeable on that contract, and you should never say anybody's untradeable, apparently, or that we didn't think anybody would bite the bullet to trade for him, but we didn't know the Kings were going to be interested, right? But jokes aside, Zach was having an awesome year. He was shooting the hell out of the ball, things like that. But since switching teams, you'll notice, firstly, there's been a heavy regression on the shooting to the point where this is just too far left. Like, this is not going to be the case. 26.4 3-point shooting on 7.5 attempts. That's just not going to be the case for him. He is hitting his free throws 94%. 43% from the field, 20 points total. They're 3-4 with him in the lineup. And since the trade on the 5th, or before the 5th, I guess, but he played his first game on the 5th. And if we look at how he was doing prior, though, just based on, I guess it's sorted by months. So I'd assume that on the season, he's still shooting amazingly because he was shooting like 45% from 3 or something like that. But basically, since the trade this month, he has been putting up those numbers at that clip. And it's not been great for them. I think that this team has a issue with their identity where they have a little bit too much offense. They've really leaned into it. They're starting Zach. They're starting DeMar. They're starting Malik Monk, who I like Malik Monk. We'll talk about him in a moment, but I think he probably is better suited as their 6th man. You probably should elevate Keon Ellis to that starting spot. I'll talk about that in a minute. Obviously, Sabonis, and they're going to Jonas as their backup. Keegan Murray's in that mix as well. Like, they don't have a lot of defense on this team. And I think that's part of the reason why they'll wind up being probably about 500 to end the season. But if you're the Kings, the thing is, the reason they pulled that trade off was because they don't want to rebuild. I said that repeatedly as somebody that lives in Market. I don't live in Sacramento anymore, but I did for a long time, but I live in Market still. I'm in this weird spot between like several teams, like the Warriors and stuff. I can't watch anybody's games. Anyway, the fan base wouldn't like it, because they came off that crazy drought, right? So I didn't think there was any chance they would give up De'Aaron and then try to rebuild and restart. I didn't think that was going to happen whatsoever, and they didn't go for that. They wound up finding and executing the most lateral move possible. It was like dead serious. Most lateral move they could have made, right? So, and they did get some draft compensation and all of that. So maybe that's something long-term that helps them. But most lateral move they can make. And it's going to take some time, though, to adjust to this. So I wanted to pull up, like I said, Malik Monk here. And overall, Malik, I think, has done great this year. I think he's having a great season. He's been largely really good for the Kings, just overall, especially after that. He's been really good in his career, period, after that one season with the Lakers where he kind of broke out after the Charlotte Hornets, I believe, gave up on him. But he's been awesome. Look, 13, 4, and 6. You take that. That's a hell of a production right there. He's coming to his own. He's been super good. If you look at the recent games for him in a primary starting role, which again is around that 5th right here, this is how he's been performing for them. So 21 points, 13 points, 17, 24, 13. The ball has been in his hands much more. You see several games there where he's got 7 assists, 8 assists, 9 assists. Like, he's doing mostly what he can. The field goal percentage is probably where I have the most concern, because he's been kind of chucking this stretch here. There's an 8-24 game. Kobe, my guy. 6-14 there, 7-17, 5-14, 8-20, 4-11. That's kind of the stretch that he's kind of been on too. And so I do wonder if maybe you would have better success with better alignment with him potentially coming off of the bench. I mean, look at the month of January where I talked about how they were just on a tear. Look at all the W's. He was awesome for them in that stretch, shooting 47%. He didn't have the 3 ball working, unfortunately, shooting 30%, but He was awesome for them overall in that stretch and played a really big role. Now, like I said, they've kind of got a lot going on here with this team, but ultimately, I think they'll still wind up being a 500 team when it all kind of comes down to it. Lastly, before we talk about Keon, I want to say that Sabonis, I think he was having an all-star caliber season, but I do think they're going to need more offensive production. Ironically, if they're going to lean into it, I think they'll need more offensive production from Sabonis. I think he'll have to score three, 4 more points. Now he's never really done that. He's scoring about the highest. He's having a career high, tying a career high and scoring at 20.3. And he's always been a rebounding machine. He's got a game in here recently where he had like 20 rebounds or 25 rebounds, something stupid like that. Like 28 rebounds. Good Lord. He's always been a rebounding machine. And so he's got a lot on his plate. He's also one of their primary, if not their like literal primary playmaker. And he's also their last line of defense for what it's worth a lot of times out there. And he's being tasked with a lot, and there's a lot on his plate. But I do think they're going to need a few more points from him. Either that or they're going to need Zach, which I would say Zach would come back around with the shooting and things like that. And then DeMar is the other piece of this. Keegan Murray, is another piece of this. They have to figure things out. But at the end of the day, they're not really going to wind up being anything above, in my opinion. Like I was saying, that 500 team, which as somebody that knows this organization, that's they just wanted to be competitive. They didn't want to lose it and start over, things like that. But I do wonder how long you can run from that. Sometimes teams try to run from that, but I just don't know if you can run from it for that long, right? So we'll see what happens. And the reason I would advocate this is I think Monk may be better coming off the bench for this team. And I also think that this aligns a little bit better with a point guard that can play some defense out there. They don't necessarily even need him to really handle the ball as much. They've got a lot of creation in that starting group. Otherwise, you could maybe make an argument to pull and swap in and out a few players of that group just to have a better alignment. But then you start getting into the politics of it all, and they're not going to do all that, right? Like they're not going to do all that. But ultimately, though, I also would like to say that, I do think that they should be okay. I've said a few times where I think they'll end, but I wanted to see their next upcoming schedule here. So after that bludgeoning from the Warriors, they have Charlotte, Utah, Houston, Dallas, Denver. So there's an opportunity to continue going 500, win a couple games, probably going to lose a couple games. Denver, Sacramento, LAC, New York, Golden State. Those could very likely be mostly all losses. That De'Aaron Fox matchup there is pretty fun, assuming he's in for that game. But they've got some opportunities here for them. But they may have gone through. I wonder what their strength of schedule is. They may have already gone through the best stretch of the season for them. I do wonder if that may be the case. Let me see that really quick, and that'll be the last thing that we do. They never mind who's number 1, but number 5, the Kings have the 5th hardest schedule remaining based on opponents' win percentage. Okay, so it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough. They burned through a lot of their easy games. It's gonna be tough. If they can do it, I would see them getting in as 9-10, and that's about it personally. And that's just me trying to be realistic. But I do think that maybe next year they can get off some of these guys, move some of the stuff around, and maybe make a better fitting team around Sabonis. I just don't think they've got the ideal roster around Sabonis as your main star. So we'll see what happens. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure to thumbs up and subscribe, of course, and we'll see you all next time.